As many of you know, or may not know, on December 24th, 2025, a Newcastle father was photographed at a beach bar displaying a tattoo that included the SS symbols or the Nazi insignia. Now, he was reported by a member of the public, tracked down by the New South Wales Police, arrested and charged under New South Wales laws that prohibit the public display of Nazi symbols. On January 22nd, 2026, the local court handed down its decision. The court found that that tattoo, although applied years earlier when such display laws did not exist, constituted a public display of a prohibited symbol, once visible in a public space. Now, the magistrate ruled that the timing of when the tattoo was inked was irrelevant. What mattered was that it was knowingly displayed in public after the law had come into force. The man was convicted. He received a $9,000 fine, a 12-month conditional release order, and most controversially about this, he received a compliance direction requiring him to either permanently remove that tattoo or ensure it's fully covered whenever in public spaces. A failure to comply with this would constitute a further offence. Now, that last part is what has many Australians sort of stopping, pausing, because now we're not just talking about speech. We're talking about compelled bodily compliance to what these governments are telling us to do. Okay, so the New South Wales amendments to the Crimes Act were introduced to combat anti-Semitism and racial hatred. Under the legislation, knowingly displaying a Nazi symbol in public without a reasonable excuse carries up to 12 months imprisonment and a fine up to $11,000. Now, having something tattooed on your body years before, I would class that as a reasonable excuse, because these laws didn't exist then. But the government's intention was clear. Reduce public displays of hateful ideology. True. All new ones. Don't go and put a sign on the side of the bridge with a swastika or something like that. But this is where the line has shifted. This wasn't a banner. It wasn't a protest sign. It wasn't somebody actively preaching extremism. It was an old ink on skin. Body art. A tattoo. Now, the court ruled that visibility equals display, and display equals offence. Remember, offence is only taken. You can't give offence. It's up to that person whether or not they've got the intestinal fortitude to not be offended by that. Now, even if the tattoo was legal when it was done, this is a profound legal development to Australian law and our dictatorship dystopian governance systems now. Here's where it becomes bigger than one man. When a government begins charging citizens for something permanently marked on their bodies, something that was not illegal at the time, now we step into uncomfortable territory here. Laws are supposed to guide future conduct, not reach backward and criminalise the past. Yes, the offence was technically concerns the act of a display after law passed. But practically speaking, a tattoo cannot simply be switched off. It is part of your body from the moment you have it put on there. And now the state can compel you to modify or conceal your own skin. If they can go ahead and do that, what can't they do to us? If symbols deemed offensive can be criminalised regardless of when they were acquired, could other forms of expression follow? Could future governments decide certain political slogans against their party are unlawful to wear? Could artwork, satire, or historical imagery be swept into expanded definitions? I don't hear the media standing up against this, the mainstream media, and that's concerning because they would be under this ruling as well. Once the precedent is set that the state may dictate what must be covered on your body in public, sounds like a bit like Islamic law, doesn't it? Where women have to totally cover themselves from head to foot and only have their eyes showing, if their eyes at all. That's what this is starting to sound like. They're setting a precedent what They can dictate that we have to fully cover our bodies. Philosophical boundaries then move, and it lets push logic further. If the government can require certain images to be covered, could it someday require certain features to be covered? Make it unlawful to have an uncovered face in public under some public order rationale. It sounds extreme until you remember that governments across the world already regulate face coverings in one direction or another. But here's the irony to it, my friends. Mandating face coverings would undermine the very facial recognition systems the governments increasingly rely on for surveillance and identification. So that's going to be something they'll have to look past if they want to do something like that. But I wouldn't put it past them. So we arrive at a strange contradiction here. Expanding power over personal appearance while simultaneously investing in technology that depends on visible identity. That tension tells us something important. The modern state wants both visibility and control. Now, let's be balanced about this. Nazi symbols are not harmless. They are historically tied to real evil, real suffering, real genocide. Now, the government's desire to prevent intimidation and anti-Semitism is understandable. And we get that word genocide being thrown around way too much these days. But these laws must be carefully bounded. When criminal liability attaches not to conduct causing harm, but to the mere presence of an image on skin, context, repentance, and personal transformation become legally irrelevant. That's right, irrelevant. And that's a significant philosophical shift to our society. It raises serious questions about proportionality and about whether punishment is addressing threat or just starting to make examples of people. And another debate is the consistency of this. If the law prohibits extremist symbols broadly, then enforcement must be even-handed. Whether it's a Nazi insignia, the ISIS flags, or any other extremist iconography, equal treatment under law is essential for public trust. I'm offended by the ISIS flag, by the Islamic State flag, by the Al-Qaeda flag, by any Islamic flag. I'm offended. So will they enact that? Now, selective enforcement corrodes legitimacy. The rule of law must apply the same standard across ideologies. So here's where we stand after that court case on January 22nd, 2026 in New South Wales Court. The court has confirmed that public displaying a prohibited symbol, even as an old tattoo, is a criminal offence. Punishments now include fines, conditional orders, and mandated covering or removal, which is a major surgical procedure to remove a tattoo. Now, the state has asserted authority not just over speech, but over how permanent body art is presented to the public. The intention may be to curb hatred. But this precedent, this court precedent, is powerful. Most people don't realise just how powerful it is at the moment. When governments gain the authority to regulate what must be concealed on our own skin, especially for something that was legal when it was done, the line between protecting society and controlling citizens becomes so thin. The question isn't whether Nazism is wrong. It's the question is how far we allow the machinery of law and government to reach into personal autonomy in order to fight it. But in other words, they just want the control. They don't want these symbols tossed away. They just want to be able to control people. Where should the boundaries be? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, please. I read the comments, and I'd love to hear what you out there think of this. And if you found this breakdown sort of helpful, because we didn't hear anything about it in the mainstream media, then please like, subscribe, and share this video. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching Voice in the Wilderness, Australia. Stay safe.